When we come across someone with avoidant behavior, our first instinct is often to take it personally. We think, they're not texting back because they've lost interest. They pulled away because I said too much. Or worse, if I were different, they'd stay. But here's the truth that most people never get taught. Avoidance isn't about you. It's about protection. Avoidant attachment, at its core, is a response to early emotional conditioning. It's formed when someone grows up in an environment where closeness felt unpredictable, conditional, or overwhelming. Maybe they had caregivers who were emotionally distant or inconsistent. People who didn't consistently show up in a nurturing, safe way. So what does a child learn in that kind of environment? They learn that vulnerability isn't safe. That needing someone means risking disappointment. That relying on others can lead to pain, not comfort. Fast forward to adulthood, and these lessons don't just disappear, so... They show up in romantic relationships where the stakes feel highest. Now you have someone who might genuinely crave love, affection, and connection, but whose instinct is to back away the moment they start to feel it. Not because they don't care, but because their emotional wiring has been built for survival, not intimacy. This is where many people misunderstand avoidant individuals. They think they're cold, emotionally unavailable, or even narcissistic. But avoidant people aren't heartless. They're guarded. There's a big difference. They may fear engulfment, the idea of losing themselves in a relationship, or they may worry that letting someone in will make them too vulnerable to hurt. So they create space. Sometimes that looks like withdrawing after a great weekend. Sometimes it's slow replies. Sometimes it's the classic "I'm just not ready for something serious" line, and it confuses the hell out of you, especially if things were going well. But when you see it for what it is, fear, not rejection, everything changes. It stops being personal. You stop going into damage control mode. And instead of chasing or proving your worth, you learn to respond with grounded clarity. Understanding avoidance doesn't mean tolerating emotional unavailability, but it does mean you stop interpreting it as a reflection of your inadequacy, because it's not. The avoidant person may feel safest when they're in control, when there's distance, when emotional intensity is low. That doesn't make you incompatible, but it does mean the relationship needs extra care and intention to work. It requires you to meet them with empathy, while also holding strong boundaries. It means knowing that while you can understand their fear, are not responsible for fixing it. So before you try to reach an avoidant heart, you have to understand what's really happening beneath the surface. You're not dealing with rejection. You're facing a self-protection strategy built over years, and when you see it clearly, you can finally stop reacting emotionally and start responding intelligently. When someone pulls away from us, especially someone we care about, our instincts often betray us. We feel that pang of distance, and our reflex is to close the gap quickly. We call more, text longer messages, try to recreate the connection we once had. Not because we're needy, but because we felt something real and we don't want to lose it. But here's the emotional paradox. The more you chase someone who's avoidant, the more they pull back. Why? Because chasing, even when it's well-intentioned, feels like pressure. And for someone with avoidant tendencies, pressure equals danger. The very act of reaching out more, asking for reassurance, or trying to move the connection forward is interpreted not as love, but as emotional overwhelm. It taps into their deepest fear. That closeness will consume them or take away their autonomy. So when you start pursuing harder in response to their withdrawal, you unknowingly reinforce their worst expectation. If people get too close, I need to pull away to feel safe. You're trying to fix the disconnection, but to them, it feels like invasion. You may be thinking, I'm showing them how much I care, but all they're feeling is, this is too much, I need space. And here's where it becomes a painful cycle. The more they withdraw, the more you chase. The more you chase, the more they withdraw. It's like a dance where both people are stepping on each other's toes, but no one realizes they're dancing to two entirely different songs. What makes this even more confusing is that sometimes your pursuit does lead to temporary reconnection. Maybe they reply after a heartfelt message. Maybe they come back for a night or a weekend, but it doesn't last because you're not solving the root issue. You're just creating a short-term sense of safety at the cost of long-term emotional imbalance. Here's the reality. Value is not proven through pursuit. It's demonstrated through composure. Through the ability to sit in uncertainty without collapsing into panic. When you resist the urge to chase, you create a powerful contrast. You become the calm instead of the storm. You show them, I'm here, but I don't need to be in control. I don't need to force this. This doesn't mean becoming passive or emotionally distant. It means embodying secure energy, where your presence is felt but not pushed. It means expressing what you feel without trying to manage their reaction. And most importantly, it means recognizing that the people who are capable of deep connection will be drawn to your peace, not your pursuit. So the next time you feel the urge to close the gap with an avoidant partner, pause, take a breath, and remind yourself chasing won't bring them closer, but self-worth might. Let your value be seen, not sold. When people think about attraction, they often focus on chemistry, excitement, charm, or physical appeal. But when it comes to sustaining a connection, especially with someone who has avoidant tendencies, none of those things matter more than one often overlooked ingredient: emotional safety. Avoidant individuals are not afraid of people. They are afraid of what closeness might cost them. They fear that getting too close will mean losing their independence, being judged for their emotional needs, or being trapped in dynamics where they're expected to give more than they're emotionally ready for. So if there's even a whiff of pressure or emotional demand, their instinct is to retreat, not because they don't like you, but because their nervous system is screaming, protect yourself. That's where emotional safety becomes your most powerful asset. Emotional safety doesn't mean tiptoeing around someone or making yourself small. It means being a steady, non-reactive presence. It means they feel accepted, not evaluated, heard, not interrogated, seen, not scrutinized. It's about creating an emotional environment where they don't feel like they're constantly being pulled, measured, or cornered into performing intimacy they're not ready for. When you're interacting with an avoidant partner, the goal isn't to get them to open up instantly. It's to give them the space to feel safe enough to want to. People confuse emotional intensity with emotional connection, but for avoidance, too much intensity too soon can feel like danger, even when it comes from love. Emotional safety invites depth in a way pressure never can. And it starts with how you show up. Can you have a calm conversation without escalating every silence into a crisis? Can you express what you need without blaming or guilt-tripping them into giving it? Can you validate your own emotions without making them responsible for fixing them? Avoidant people are often hypersensitive to control. So when you show up grounded, self-assured, and respectful of their space, it creates contrast. You become the exception, not the echo of what they feared. You show them. You can be close to me and still be you. You don't have to choose between connection and freedom. That's what creates breakthroughs, not pleading, not proving, but presence. The irony is when someone feels truly safe around you, emotionally safe, they often begin to come closer on their own, not because they're being pulled, but because they want to. Because they feel something rare, the ability to connect without feeling consumed. So if you want to reach the heart of someone avoidant, forget pressure, forget trying to get through to them. Focus on cultivating emotional safety in how you speak, in how you listen, and most importantly, in how you hold yourself. Because when they sense that your peace isn't conditional on their pace, they may finally feel safe enough to step forward. When someone you care about begins to pull away or seem emotionally unavailable, the urge to talk it out can feel overwhelming. You want clarity, connection, reassurance. You want to understand where you stand. And naturally, the impulse is to confront the issue head on, to ask questions like, what's going on with us? Or why are you being distant? But when you're dealing with someone who leans avoidant, this kind of direct, emotionally charged communication often has the opposite effect of what you intend. Avoidant individuals don't respond well to feeling cornered. In fact, that kind of interaction triggers their protective reflex. When they sense emotional confrontation, even if it's well-meaning, they feel like their autonomy is being threatened. Suddenly, the conversation stops feeling like an invitation to connect and starts feeling like a demand to comply. That's when they either shut down, get defensive, or detach further. And unfortunately, the more you try to pull the truth out of them, the more they feel the need to retreat. This doesn't mean you have to suppress your needs or walk on eggshells. It simply means learning a different language, one based on invitation rather than interrogation. You want to create space for connection, not control the outcome. The most effective way to communicate with someone who has avoidant tendencies is to express how you feel without making them the villain or forcing them to explain something they're not ready to articulate. For example, instead of saying, "Why are you being so distant lately?" you might say, "I've noticed we haven't been as connected lately, and I miss the closeness we had." That subtle shift changes everything. One version sounds like accusation, the other sounds like vulnerability. You're not avoiding the truth. You're softening the delivery so the truth can be received. Also, keep your tone steady. Don't come in emotionally loaded with all your fears or frustrations. That kind of emotional flooding can make even the most self-aware person shut down. And for someone avoidant, it's especially overwhelming. Instead, communicate as someone who is calm, grounded, and self-respecting. You're not begging for clarity. You're offering a window for connection, and you're strong enough to walk away if it's not reciprocated. Remember, people open up when they feel emotionally safe and respected, not when they feel cornered into an answer. So the real power in communication isn't in how forcefully you express your needs, but in how intentionally you create an environment where honesty can exist without fear. The goal isn't to trap someone into giving you what you want. The goal is to share your truth in a way that allows their truth to come forward too, freely, not fearfully. That's how real connection begins. When someone starts to pull away emotionally, especially someone with avoidant tendencies, it can feel like a threat to the connection you're building. You feel the distance growing, and naturally you want to close the gap. You want to bring things back to how they were. And in trying to do that, many people make the mistake of either chasing after them, which creates more pressure, or shutting down completely, matching the emotional distance in a form of self-protection. But neither extreme builds a healthy relationship. The key is to mirror their pace, not their distance. Let's break that down. Mirroring their pace means you're observing how slowly or cautiously they move emotionally. And instead of forcing a faster rhythm, you respect their tempo without losing your own clarity or boundaries. You're not disconnecting or going cold. You're staying present, but without trying to rush them into emotional closeness they're not ready for. This is powerful because it communicates, "I respect where you're at, and I'm not going to push you. But I'm also not going to overextend myself to compensate for your hesitation." Now contrast that with mirroring their distance, which is reactive. It's when you say, "Oh, you're pulling away. Fine, I'll shut down too. I'll pretend I don't care. I'll match your emotional absence." But doing this creates a dynamic of emotional withdrawal on both sides. And that's how potentially meaningful connections fade into nothing. Mirroring pace requires emotional intelligence. It means being attuned to the moment without losing your own center. It's the difference between saying, "I haven't heard from you all day. Why are you ignoring me?" versus, "I noticed you've been a bit quiet today. Just checking in, no pressure." One comes from neediness, the other from calm presence. One chases, the other invites. This approach also gives the avoidant person a chance to regulate themselves and feel safe re-engaging at their own speed, which is key because many avoidant people don't respond to emotional demands, but they do respond to emotional consistency. They may not move as quickly as you'd like, but if they feel that you're not trying to push them along, they're more likely to keep stepping forward slowly and steadily. What makes this especially empowering for you is that it keeps you in control of your energy. You're not abandoning your emotional needs. You're just not demanding someone meet them on your schedule. You're giving space, not because you're afraid of losing them, but because you respect both their process and your own worth. So the art is in staying emotionally open, but not emotionally over-invested in someone who isn't meeting you there yet. It's moving with awareness, not desperation. Because when you mirror someone's pace instead of reacting to their distance, you create space for trust to build on your terms and theirs. One of the most attractive and rare qualities in any relationship is emotional security. It's not about being perfect or never feeling anxious. It's about how you handle those emotions when they come up. And when you're dealing with someone who has avoidant tendencies, your emotional energy becomes even more important. Because they're not just responding to your words, they're reading your emotional vibe. Insecure energy pushes them away. Secure energy draws them in. So what does insecure energy look like? It shows up as over-explaining your worth. constantly checking in for reassurance, making their behavior mean something about you. You say things like, did I do something wrong? Or I just want to know where I stand. It's when you're operating from a place of fear. Fear of losing them, fear of not being enough, fear of being abandoned. And even though it's completely human to feel those things, when your actions are led by that fear, they create pressure. They subtly send the message, I need you to behave a certain way for me to feel okay. And that's when someone avoidant feels cornered and begins to shut down. Secure energy, on the other hand, is completely different. It's not about pretending not to care. It's about knowing that you'll be okay with or without their validation. It's the calm confidence that says, I want this to work, but I'm not going to lose myself trying to make it happen. Secure energy gives the connection space to breathe. It allows the other person to come closer at their own pace, not because they're being pushed, but because they feel safe enough to want to. Leading with secure energy means you communicate clearly but calmly. You can express your feelings without demanding a specific outcome. You're not performing or overcompensating. You're just being real, grounded, open, and self-respecting. This doesn't mean you never speak up or always take the high road. It means you choose to respond rather than react. If they need space, you give it, not from a place of punishment, but from a place of self-respect. If they come closer, you receive it, not with skepticism, but with openness. You're not trying to control their behavior. You're managing your own. And here's the irony. The more securely you show up, the more it disrupts the avoidant pattern. You become the first person who isn't trying to fix them, force them, or flee from them. You become emotionally consistent, which is exactly what they've never trusted before. War. So if you want to truly reach an avoidant heart, don't beg for connection. Don't shrink yourself to win their affection. Stand tall in your own emotional certainty. Let them feel the difference between someone who needs them to feel whole and someone who chooses them from a place of wholeness. That's how you inspire safety. And safety is the first step toward connection. When we think about building trust, we often focus on what we can give. Attention, affection, understanding. But for someone with avoidant tendencies, trust isn't built through closeness alone. It's built through boundaries. It may sound counterintuitive, but your ability to set healthy emotional limits, to know where you end and they begin, is exactly what allows them to feel emotionally safe around you. Avoidant individuals often fear emotional enmeshment. They associate closeness with control, pressure, or the loss of independence. So if you try to prove your love by being endlessly available, sacrificing your own needs, or tolerating unclear behavior, you may believe you're being supportive. But to them, it can feel like the early signs of emotional suffocation. On the other hand, when you set healthy boundaries, calmly, consistently, and without drama, you send a powerful signal. I can be close to you without needing to lose myself in you. That's exactly what an avoidant person needs to trust you. Not because you're proving yourself through perfection, but because you're showing them a different kind of connection, one that doesn't demand their full emotional surrender before they're ready. Your boundaries also help them trust your words. If you say, I'm okay with space, but secretly feel resentful or anxious, they'll sense that incongruence. And when your words and emotions don't match, it makes you feel unpredictable. And unpredictability is what drives avoidance to shut down. They don't want to feel like they're walking into an emotional trap. But if you say, I respect your need for space, and I also have limits around what I'm available for, and then honor that limit, something powerful happens. You're not punishing them. You're simply demonstrating that this relationship will be based on mutual respect, not emotional overfunctioning. You're showing that love doesn't mean self-abandonment. Boundaries also protect you. They stop you from investing in someone who's not meeting you halfway. And they send a quiet but clear message. I won't chase, but I won't shrink either. If this is going to work, it will work from a place of mutual choice. Not fear, not guilt, not pressure. Many people worry that setting boundaries will push someone away. But the truth is, the right boundaries do the opposite. They build trust, especially with someone who's been afraid of being consumed in relationships. You show them that emotional closeness doesn't have to come at the cost of their autonomy. That you're someone who can hold space for connection and respect personal limits. And that is rare. That is powerful. That is what earns not just affection, but respect. So if you want to reach an avoidant heart, Don't just give more. Stand in your worth. Stand in your worth. Let your boundaries be your message. I'm here, I'm steady, and I'm not afraid to love you, but I'll never lose myself trying. Warmth is magnetic. It's the subtle energy that makes people feel safe, accepted, and emotionally drawn in. And when you're dealing with someone who has avoidant tendencies, warmth plays a critical role. It helps to disarm their defenses and create a sense of emotional ease. But there's an important distinction here. Warmth is not the same as overinvestment, and knowing the difference can mean everything. Overinvestment happens when you start giving more than what's being reciprocated. It's when you go out of your way to constantly initiate, to please, to check in, to accommodate, hoping that if you just give enough, they'll eventually meet you with the same effort. But someone who's emotionally avoidant doesn't respond well to this kind of energy. Not because they don't appreciate kindness, but because they feel overwhelmed by expectations they didn't agree to. Overinvesting too early in a connection can unintentionally communicate neediness, the unspoken message that says, I'm trying to earn your love or prove my worth. For someone avoidant, this kind of energy feels heavy. It makes them feel like they're being pulled into something that requires emotional performance, and they'll often retreat to avoid that pressure. On the other hand, warmth that comes from self-possession is incredibly powerful. It says, I enjoy you, but I don't need you to validate me. I'm open, but I'm not overreaching. You're available, but not desperate. Kind, but not sacrificing your standards. You can express affection or interest, but you're also okay with space. That kind of energy is attractive to anyone, but especially to someone who's afraid of being engulfed in a relationship. Warmth is in the tone of your voice, the lightness in your presence, the way you offer without demanding. It's a smile that doesn't cling, a message that doesn't chase a reply, an invitation that doesn't come with a hook. You give because it's authentic, not because you're trying to secure a response. That's the key. The balance to strike here is one of emotional generosity with boundaries. You can be thoughtful without bending over backwards. You can be encouraging without overfunctioning. You're showing them I'm capable of deep connection, but I'm not going to pour endlessly into someone who's not pouring back. And what happens over time is this. Your presence becomes a soft place for them to land, not a push they need to resist. Your warmth opens the door to emotional intimacy, but your restraint keeps the relationship balanced. They begin to trust that your care doesn't come with strings, and ironically, that's what makes them want to come closer. So don't shut down your warmth just because you're afraid of giving too much, and keep it. Own it, but offer it from a place of strength, not scarcity. When warmth is paired with self-respect, it becomes one of the most compelling energies you can bring into any connection, especially one with someone who fears closeness. It's incredibly tempting to want to help someone change, especially when you see their potential. When you're connected to someone with avoidant tendencies, it's natural to want to pull them closer, to help them open up, to show them what love could be like if only they let it in. But this instinct, while well-meaning, can actually backfire. Trying to fix someone's emotional avoidance often becomes its own form of pressure, and pressure is the very thing they're most sensitive to. People who are avoidant aren't broken, they're protective. Their behavior is usually rooted in past experiences where closeness felt overwhelming, unpredictable, or unsafe. When they sense that someone is trying to change them, even if it's done subtly, even if it comes from a place of care, their walls go up. They begin to feel like a project, not a person. And the more you try to coax them into emotional availability, the more they may recoil or detach. So what actually works? Not fixing, but modeling emotional safety. Emotional safety is the environment where trust can grow. It's the feeling that says, I'm not going to force you, rush you, or emotionally ambush you. You're allowed to be where you are, and I'm going to stay grounded in where I am too. That kind of presence is rare. It's quiet, it's calm, and it's confident. It's not about making dramatic speeches or trying to crack them open. It's about consistently showing up with emotional clarity and self-respect. You model emotional safety by being steady, not reactive. You don't punish their withdrawal, but you also don't enable it by chasing or tolerating inconsistency. You're available, but you have boundaries. You're warm, but not overbearing. And most importantly, you're honest about your feelings without trying to manipulate theirs. Instead of saying, "Oh, why do you always shut down?" you say, I feel more connected when we talk things through. I'd love to understand you better, but I also respect if you need time. That's not fixing. That's inviting. You're expressing what closeness looks like to you while giving them space to decide if and how they want to step in. Ironically, the less you try to fix someone, the more you create the conditions where change can naturally happen. When an avoidant person starts to feel that you are emotionally safe, not because you're tolerating everything, but because you're grounded and consistent, they begin to relax their grip on old patterns. Not because you demanded it, but because you made it safe enough for them to try something different. So if you truly want to reach someone with avoidant tendencies, don't take on the role of their therapist or emotional savior. Instead, be the example of emotional maturity they never knew they could trust. Not to fix them, but to give them a reason to grow on their own terms. That's where real connection begins. Patience is one of those qualities that's talked about a lot, but often misunderstood, especially when it comes to relationships. When you're trying to connect with someone who has avoidant tendencies, patience isn't just a virtue, it's an essential form of respect. It's saying, I see you. I understand your fears and I'm willing to walk with you at a pace that feels safe. For many people, impatience comes from fear. Fear of loss, fear of being ignored, fear of not being loved back. When someone pulls away or hesitates to open up, the instinct might be to push harder, to ask more questions, to demand answers. But with avoidant individuals, this strategy almost always backfires. It creates pressure, which increases their distance. What's needed instead is a deeper kind of strength. The strength to wait without losing your own sense of worth or becoming desperate. Patience is not passive. It's an active choice to hold space for someone without trying to control how or when they respond. It means being present without pushing, caring without clinging, and loving without sacrificing yourself. This kind of patience communicates a profound respect for the other person's inner process, their emotional rhythm, and their readiness. When you practice patience, you're also showing trust. Trust in their capacity to come around in their own time, and trust in your own capacity to handle uncertainty without feeling diminished. It's a powerful message to send because many avoidant people have grown up feeling like closeness only comes with strings attached or conditions. Patience breaks that cycle by allowing closeness to unfold naturally, without deadlines or ultimatums. It's important to remember that patience has boundaries. It's not about waiting endlessly while tolerating disrespect or neglect. It's about knowing your limits and honoring your own needs while also giving the other person room to breathe. True patience means balancing hope with realism, hoping for connection, but not waiting so long that you lose yourself in the process. Over time, patience becomes a form of emotional leadership. It shows that you're someone who can hold steady in the face of uncertainty, who won't run away or panic, but who will remain consistent and kind. And for someone with avoidant tendencies, that steadiness is incredibly disarming. It creates a safe container where they can begin to explore vulnerability without fear of rejection or pressure. So if you want to reach an avoidant heart, cultivate patience as an act of love, not just for them, but for yourself. It's one of the most respectful and powerful ways to say, I see you. I'm here, and I'm willing to wait until you're ready. In doing so, you don't just honor their pace, you honor your own strength and worth, and that is the foundation for any meaningful connection. At the heart of reaching someone with avoidant tendencies lies a deeper truth. Connection isn't about chasing, forcing, or fixing. It's about showing up with clarity, respect, and emotional strength, meeting them where they are while never losing sight of your own worth. When you lead with secure energy, set clear boundaries, and mirror their pace instead of their distance, you create a space where trust can slowly but surely take root. Remember, warmth offered without overinvestment, patience given without desperation, and emotional safety modeled rather than demanded. These are the building blocks of real intimacy. They invite someone who's been guarded for so long to consider that closeness doesn't have to feel like danger or confinement. Instead, it can be a choice made freely from a place of safety. So rather than trying to change them or rush the process, embrace the power of presence, the calm confidence that says, I'm here, I respect you, and I'm willing to wait until we're both ready. That's how you move beyond chasing and begin to genuinely reach an avoidant heart. Because ultimately, the strongest relationships aren't the ones where one person runs and the other pursues. They're the ones where two whole people choose each other freely, safely, and with patience. And that kind of connection, that's worth waiting for.